Hi, how's it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful morning. That's when I'm recording this anyway. It is going to be a hot day today, so I am enjoying all the windows open. It's nice and cool in here right now. And we're going to talk a little bit about that anxious feeling, that feeling that you get maybe when you're prepping for trial or prepping to meet with a client, that feeling that we get when we're rushed, like we have a deadline and we are killing ourselves to make it. Now, it's interesting, and it's interesting to me now that I know more about it. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I assumed there was something wrong with me, that, there was something lacking in me, and that's what caused it. But I want you to know that it is perfectly normal. So we're going to go through what causes it. We're going to talk about the 4 things, there's 4, that we do, but only one of them is helpful. The other 3 just exacerbate the problem. So I just want to focus on this one thing you can do. I'm going to give you some tools to help you the next time you notice this going on in your body. So you will notice, I've got a dog here and he's running around. He's a little excited. But sometimes he gets anxiety too, and really it ties into what we're talking about today because it's all in our brain. It's how the chemicals in our brain are working. And I want you to recognize how important it is to master the tools I'm going to share with you, because the more prolonged exposure we have to these chemicals produced in our body that create this anxiety, this stressful feeling in our body, the less healthful it is. So it is bad in our body. Now, it used to be a good thing, but now that we have so many stressors in our life, it's actually creating a really big problem, and it turns into the form of things like cancer, heart disease, those kinds of things that we're having more and more instances of in our society. So let me introduce myself. My name's Dina Cataldo, and I help lawyers really own what they want and go after it. But I help them in such a way that they create more ease in their life getting there. Now, I'm also the host of Soul Roadmap podcast, and that is a resource for you if you want to get more, and not just more information, but more tools to really help you with your life and how you want to live it. Because if you're listening to this, you want to live life better. So there's some common misconceptions about this anxious feeling that we have. And I want you to recognize them, because if any of these resonate with you, I want you to kind of perk your ears up. I want to make sure you're here with me, because this really applies to you. So we already talked about a couple, right? I don't have enough time is a thought that we have, and it helps create these chemicals in our body that's creating this anxious feeling in us, right? So I don't have enough time. Sometimes it's, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. That's another thought that pops up a lot. The thought that, what if I can't do this? So there's something about us that's wrong, right? That's a thought that we're having when we have this feeling. We're like, why do I feel so stressed out? There's got to be something going on with me. We turn that blame inside. And then we don't recognize, though, that the truth is that this is completely normal. So there's the prefrontal cortex, which is the goal-setting place, right? Like, we know what we want. We have a goal. When we feel really focused and in the zone, we're up here. Now, in the back of our head is the reptilian brain. Some people call it the primitive brain. And in that area, we're getting all of these neurotransmitters that are being triggered in our body when we have some sense of fear. That fear that we don't have enough time to complete something, that fear that we're not good enough, that we don't know what we're doing, that we're too young, that we're too old, all of those things that we make up in our mind. And our reptilian brain is then triggered to have all these neurotransmitters to relay into our bodies, hey, we need to release these chemicals because our body here is going to die. I mean, that's really what it thinks. It really thinks that we are going to die, because it used to be really helpful, right? I mean, it's still helpful. If you're really scared, like if you're running from a bear, you want those chemicals reacting in your body because you want to feel that adrenaline rush. You want to be able to feel that, instant reaction you need to have, whether it's fight or flight or freeze. That is what those chemicals are so good for. But when we are chronically stressed, when we have those chemicals in our body all the time, what we're creating in our body is a recipe for disaster. It's creating those toxins in our bodies that are going to lead to things like cancer or heart disease that are coming to us at a younger and younger age. And part of the problem is that we haven't mastered the tools, A, just to recognize what's happening in our body, and B, to begin to make shifts in our life that are easy and will fit into our lives, right? Like, I'm not talking about like, let's join a retreat and go meditating on a mountain. I'm talking about really practical tools that we can use whenever we feel this, okay? So I want you to know that this is totally doable, the tools that I'm going to share with you. So there's 4 ways that we really react to or respond to these feelings, this anxious feeling, this overwhelmed feeling that I'm talking about. So one of the ways that we respond is by resisting. And what does that look like in our life? It looks like getting angry with ourselves. Why can't we do this? Why aren't we good enough to do this? And we get really angry with ourselves, but that really doesn't help the issue at all. In fact, you can feel that you get more anxious when you start blaming yourself. Another thing that we do to respond is to react. So that's when you notice when you're snapping at people, like, they had absolutely no business, or you had absolutely no business snapping at them. They had absolutely nothing to do with the issue, but you did it anyway. So if you've ever had a really hard day at the office and you come home and you snap at your partner, that is a sign that you're having this anxious, overwhelmed feeling, and it's time to start addressing this. And the long-term effects of us actually addressing this feeling can be really beneficial to our relationships. So I just want you to keep a lookout for some of these things. If you are responding to them in any way, this is the time to start addressing this issue. Another thing that we do is we avoid this feeling, and oftentimes we don't even notice that we're doing it, because it's so natural to us. It's our brain's habit. We've created a habit of responding to this anxious feeling in such a way. So what do I mean by buffering? It means, let's say you are, overworking. All right, that's one thing. So if you are constantly working because you feel like you're going to get ahead if you're going to work more and more and more, that's the position I was in at one point, you are buffering with work. So you are trying to ignore that anxious feeling with more work. Same thing with absent-mindedly snacking at your desk, or watching Netflix when you come home and you're just watching hours of television rather than doing anything that you really want to do in your life. So let's say you have a goal of actually like writing a book. I know that's a really common thing. A lot of us feel like we have the next great American novel in us, and a lot of us do. But so many of us don't take action because we are so busy buffering. We had such a hard day at work and we're so stressed out. We have that anxious feeling in our body, and our brain searches for something that's comfortable. All right. And I talk about that in today's podcast today, evolution. So if you are interested in learning more about this or getting some inspiration in this area of your life to evolve and get uncomfortable, that's another place to start, is episode 61 today. So if you want the one thing that works out of all 4 of these things, I'm going to tell you it right now. Acceptance. All right. And I'm not talking about like, oh yeah, it's okay to have this anxious feeling. It's acceptance that, you know what, this is 100% my responsibility to deal with, and I can do this. So once you accept that and you own responsibility, you know that you have control over this feeling in your life. There's a few things that you can do to really start to shift things in your life. Because once you begin to master this area of your life, you're going to notice so many areas that are just going to open up for you. So the first thing to do is to notice it, right? So name it. What do you feel when you feel this feeling? Does it feel like anxiety? Does it feel like stress? For me personally, I feel it in my shoulders. I feel it in my chest. I get like really tense, and I notice that my breath is really shallow. And so that's how I notice it. And I name it and I say, I'm feeling anxious right now. I feel stressed out right now. And if you want to take that next step, write it down. And what exactly are you feeling and what's happening in that moment when you're feeling it? You could be doing anything. You could be driving to work and you're feeling anxious. You could be driving from work and you're feeling anxious. It doesn't necessarily mean you feel anxious about the office or your home, because you've had this feeling in your body probably for some time. You really have to start pinpointing, okay, what am I doing? When do I feel it the most? So start writing it down, describe it, like describe where you feel it in your body. Maybe it's your stomach. A lot of times there's like gut issues that happen because we're feeling this anxious feeling. So if you see people with IBS, a lot of times, it's because they have this feeling and they haven't been able to master this feeling inside themselves. And then what is it that the next thing I want you to do is kind of play with this feeling. So it might kind of sound funny, but once you start playing with this feeling, you're going to recognize that you do have control over it. So you can make yourself feel more anxious and more tense. You can grip a little bit tighter, and you can recognize that there's variations of it, right? Like you know when it's the most intense versus when it's just a low level anxiousness that you're feeling. So I want you to start to recognize that you can play with the intensity of it, and that'll give you a little bit more confidence moving forward. Another great thing that I learned to do, and this was something I learned through yoga, was Jaya Breathing. So Jaya Breathing goes like this. You breathe in through your nose, and then you close just a little bit the back of your throat, and it's like you're fogging a mirror if you have your mouth open. That's the feeling you want in the back of your throat. So you take your breath in, and then you leave your mouth closed, and then when you breathe out through your nose, you're going to have the back of your throat constricted. So it'll sound like this. So what that's doing is really bringing some awareness to your breath. It's also bringing you into place, and it's filling your body with oxygen, because you've probably been breathing really shallow breaths when you felt this anxious feeling. And so now it's time to really rev it up, really fill your body with air. I've also heard another one that works well for some people, which is belly breathing. So rather than breathing through your chest, you're like I have my hands on my stomach right now. So if you want to put your hands on your stomach, you breathe in. I breathe in through my chest. So I'm breathing in, but then when you exhale, you breathe out and you expand your belly. So then you're really feeling your belly, expand and contract when you're doing this belly breathing. Just start to recognize that might be a way for you to begin to reduce this feeling. Another thing that I do when I notice this feeling is I shut my door and I just take a few moments and just sit there. I notice my breath, but I just sit there. I close my eyes. I don't play on my phone. I don't look at my computer. I don't want any stimulation in front of me, in other words. And I sit there just for like a minute. It could be 60 seconds, which is about 10 breaths. And that will greatly reduce that feeling. The more you do this, the more you're going to recognize this anxious feeling that you have, and the more you're going to be able to say no to it. The more you're going to be able to say, okay, I see you there, and I'm going to own you, and I'm going to take care of you. And there you go. It's really about taking care of yourself, right? Like, this is about recognizing what's going on in your body, understanding that there are tools that will help you, and then using those tools. Now, I don't want you to feel like you're going to have this, instant recognition of what's going on in your body and this instant habit of going into one of these tools that I shared with you, because this is a habit you have to learn. But don't just give up one time because you don't do it. Just recognize, okay, I didn't do it that time. That's okay. Now I'm going to try it again. That's it. That's all you have to do, is just keep trying it. The more you do it, the more over time you do it, the easier it will become to recognize what's going on in your body and then take ownership of it, then make a change. So if this interests you at all, this whole work that we did has to do with the thought cycle. And I love the thought cycle, and it's Brooke Castillo really brought it to my attention through the model that she uses, but I really like to think of it more as a thought cycle, and I actually create a diagram for it in a video that I've created. It's a free mini training on the thought cycle. If you're interested in doing this work, if you're interested in learning more about how your brain works, and you want to understand more about how you can start making shifts in your life that are really simple, I want you to go to dinacataldo.com/thought cycle. I've linked to this in the video notes, because when you start to understand how your mind works, you're going to be able to see more of what benefits you in your life, and is that really going to get you what you want? Because I'm all about setting big goals and making them happen, but I don't want to feel stress in my body. I want to make sure I'm in control of how I feel about it. I want it to make it as easy as possible. And that's what this thought cycle is about. It's about making your life as easy as possible, but still reaching for those huge goals that you have. So go to dinacataldo.com/thought cycle. There you will get access to the video. You can get access to the video. And I want you to really just dive in full force on this. I want you to really take ownership of what's going on in your life, because once you do, you're going to feel so much more in control. Oftentimes we think that control is manipulating outside forces, but for me now, control is recognizing what's going on in my body and taking ownership of it and making the feelings that I want to feel happen. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.